Okay. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yatapatakamallam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsh Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadhvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Shri Shakhanvitam Shjar Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtai Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityananda Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyadi Pashatya Deshotarini Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarvashastra Piyusha Sarvaveda Satphala Sarvasiddhanta Ratnadhya Sarvalokita Triprada Sarvabhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kalidhvanto Digaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita Paramananda Pathaya Premavarshaksharaaya Te Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namastu Me Adeka Bandho Matsangin Madguro Manmahadhana Mannistaraka Madbhagya Madananda Namostute Sadhu Sadhutadayim Atinichochatakara Panavanchakadachin Mam Remna Hitkanthayospra Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 3.6.2 purport. The ingredients of matter are counted as 23. The total material energy, false ego, sound, touch, form, taste, smell, earth, water, fire, air, sky, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, hands, feet, evacuating organ, genitals, voice, and mind, all are combined together by the influence of time and are again dissolved in the course of time. Time, therefore, is the energy of the Lord and acts in her own way by the direction of the Lord. This energy is called Kali and is represented by the dark destructive goddess, generally worshipped by persons influenced by the mode of darkness or ignorance in material existence. In a Vedic hymn, this process is described as Mula Prakrita Vikritir Mahadadya Prakriti Vikritaya Sapta Shodashakastu Vikaro Na Prakritir Na Vikriti Purushaha. Wait, what's it coming from? The energy which acts as the material nature in a combination of the 23 ingredients is not the final source of creation. The Lord enters into the elements and applies his energy called Kali. In all other Vedic scriptures, the same principle is accepted. In the Brahma Samhita 5.35, it is stated, Ekopyasau rachitam jagadanda kotim itchaktirasti jagadanda chayayadantaha andantarastha pravan chayantarastham govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, who is the original personality of God. By his partial plenary expansion, Mahavishnu, he enters into material nature and then into each and every universe as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, then as Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, into all the elements, including every atom of matter. Such manifestations of cosmic creation are innumerable, both in the universes and in the individual atoms. Similarly, this is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 10.42. Athava bhavanaitena ingyatena tavarjuna Vishtabhyaham kritsnam ekamshena sthito jagat. O Arjuna, there is no necessity of your knowing about my innumerable energies which act in various ways. I enter into the material creation by my partial plenary expansion, Paramatma or the Super Soul, in all the universes and in all the elements thereof. And thus the work of creation goes on. The wonderful activities of the material nature are due to Lord Krishna, and thus he is the final cause or the ultimate cause of all causes. 3. Sonu prabhishto bhagavams cheshta rupena tam ganam bhinnam samyojayamasa suptam karma prabodhayan. Thus, when the personality of God entered into the elements by his energy, all the living entities were enlivened into different activities, just as one is engaged in his work after awakening from sleep. चेष्टारूपेण क्रियाशक्त्या चेष्टारूपेण कर्म तेषां क्रियां जीवानाम् अदृष्टं वा karma, okay, karma, karma. Enlightening them, enlightening them into different activities. Also in accordance with their adrishta, their previous karmic reactions. Their unseen destinies which have been created by themselves. Cheshta rupena purvaktena कालाख्येन एव कारणभूतेन यः अयं कालः तस्य ते अव्यक्तबन्धो चेष्टामाहो इत्युक्ते is reference to something that came before. Krishna Chakravarti Thakur just repeats Sridhar Swami. Every individual soul remains unconscious after the dissolution of the creation and thus enters into the Lord with this material energy. Okay, just wait, I cannot help. I must. This conversation. Continue on this Kali. Point. 6 point. Okay. Every individual soul remains unconscious after the dissolution of the creation and thus enters into the Lord with this material energy. These individual living entities are conditioned souls everlastingly. But in each and every material creation, they are given a chance to liberate themselves and become free souls. They are all given a chance to take advantage of the Vedic wisdom and find out what is their relationship with the Supreme Lord, how they can be liberated, and what the ultimate profit is in such liberation. By properly studying the Vedas, one becomes conscious of this position and thus takes to the transcendental devotional service of the Lord and is gradually promoted to the spiritual sky. The individual souls in the material world engage in different activities according to their past unfulfilled desires. After the dissolution of a particular body, the individual soul forgets everything. But the all-merciful Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart as a witness, super soul, awakens him and reminds him of his past unfulfilled desires. Thus, he begins to act accordingly in his next life. This unseen guidance is described as fate, and a sensible man can understand that this continues his material bondage in the three modes of nature. The unconscious sleeping stage of the living entity, just after the partial or total dissolution of the creation, is wrongly accepted as the final stage of life by some less intelligent philosophers. Now, this partial dissolution is Brahma's night. Total dissolution is after one Brahma dies and before the next Brahma is put in the post. After the dissolution of the material body, a living entity remains unconscious for only a few months. And after the total dissolution of the material creation, it remains unconscious for many millions of years. But when the creation is again revived, he is awakened to his world by the Lord. Living in it is eternal. And the wakeful state of his consciousness manifested by activities is a natural condition of life. He cannot stop acting while awake, and thus he acts according to his diverse desires. When he is trained to employ his desires in the transcendental service of the Lord, his life becomes perfect and is promoted to the spiritual sky to enjoy eternal awakened life. 4. Prabhuddha karma daivena त्रयोविंशतिको गणः प्रेरितो जनयत् स्वाभिर्मात्राभिरधिपूरुषम्. When the 23 principal elements were awakened to action by the will of the Supreme, the gigantic universal form or the Vishwarupa body of the Lord came into existence. Prabhuddham karma kriyashakti yasya satrayovinshate ganah daivena ishwarena preritah matrabhi amshaihi. That is matrabhi. Matrabhi. Adhipurusham Virat Deham, Adhipurusham Brahmanda Rupam. This universal body is actually the form of the universe. Paham Tamo Mahadaham Charagni Varbhu Ityadyukte. This is Brahma's prayer. Prabhuddham, okay. The Virat Rupa or Vishwarupa, the gigantic universal form of the Lord, which is very much appreciated by the impersonalists, is not an eternal form of the Lord. It is manifested by the supreme will of the Lord after the ingredients of material creation are awakened to action. Lord Krishna exhibited this Virat or Vishwarupa to Arjuna just to convince impersonalists that he is the original personality of God. Krishna exhibited the Virat Rupa. It's not that Krishna was exhibited by the Virat Rupa. The Virat Rupa is not therefore an eternal form of the Lord exhibited in the spiritual sky. It is a material manifestation of the Lord. The Archa Vigraha or the worshipable deity in the temple is a similar manifestation of the Lord for the neophytes. But in spite of the material touch, such forms of the Lord as Virat and Archa are all non-different from his eternal form as Lord Krishna. By Parena Vishata Swasmin Matraya Vishwasri Ganaha Chukshobhanyonyamasадья Yasmin Lokas Chara Chara. As the Lord in his plenary portion entered into the elements of the universal creation, they transformed into the gigantic form in which all the planetary systems and all moving and non-moving creations rest. Okay, what is the question? There's some question here.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes,
Prabhu, how to understand this non-difference of Virat Roop with Lord's eternal form or DT form? Because DT form we consider it spiritual, but Virat form we saw it is material only. So how it is non-different
Technically
from
material. It is technically material, just like the deity is also apparently material. So similarly, the universe also. The Virat form is simply the universe. The universe itself is like an extended body of the Lord because he has entered into it as Garbhodakshay Vishnu. So he is the Atma, the soul of the universe. So in a metaphorical sense, the universe is said to be his body. Rupa here means Sharira, Deha. So Virat Sharira, Virat Deha, or Virat Rupa here indicate that it is an extended body of the Lord. It is not his intrinsic body. It is his extrinsic body. So that is stressed in certain Upanishads. It is stressed in certain parts of the scriptures. So when he takes charge of it, activates it, then it is all considered to be a single unit functioning under his absolute control. So in that sense, it is said to be his extended body. So therefore, it is similar to the deity form that we worship.
okay,
That's all.
Prabhu. Yes.
Jananamevaha. Yes.
No, Prabhu, nothing.
Okay. Jananamevaha. Now the generation is being described. Parena Ishwarena. Vishwasrajam. Satwanam Ganaha. Vishwasrajam. Okay. Matraya Chukshobha. Parinataha. Matraya Chukshobha. Where is Matraya? A part of it transformed. No, Sarvatmana. It was not completely transformed. Yasmil Lokastitha. That part was transformed in which all the worlds that contain the moving and the non-moving were situated. Vishwasrajam. Tattvanam Ganaha. I have a feeling that this itself is a spelling mistake. It must have been Tattvanam. I need to check it. Tattvanam Ganaha. Swasmin Parena, Parameshwarena, Matraya Amshena, Vishata, Sata, Anyonyam Asadhya, Pradhana Guna Bhavam Prapya, Chukshova, Garbharupena Parinataha. So the universe developed the way a child in the womb develops. Anyonyam Asadhya indicates that certain elements became more prominent. And this is an indication that Panchikarana has happened. It appears to be so. Particular elements become more predominant, and in that way, creation actually takes place. The elements of cosmic creation are all matter and have no potency to increase in volume unless entered into by the Lord in his plenary portion. This means that matter does not increase or decrease unless it is spiritually touched. Matter is a product of spirit and increases only by the touch of spirit. The entire cosmic manifestation has not assumed its gigantic form by itself, as wrongly calculated by less intelligent persons. As long as spirit is within matter, matter can increase as needed. But without the spirit, matter stops increasing. For example, as long as there is spiritual consciousness within the material body of a living entity, the body increases to the required size. But a dead material body, which has no spiritual consciousness, stops increasing. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, importance is given to the spiritual consciousness, not the body. The entire cosmic body increased by the same process that we experience in our small bodies. One should not, however, foolishly think that the individual infinitesimal soul is the cause of the gigantic manifestation of the universal form. The universal form is called the Virat Rupa because the Supreme Lord is within it in his plenary portion. 6. Hiranmayasya Purusha Sahasra Parivatsaran Andakushu Uvahapsu Sarvasattva Brahmitaha. The gigantic Virat Purusha known as Hiranmaya lived for 1000 celestial years on the water of the universe, and all the living entities live with him. Sapurusha Adhipurusha Ityuktaha. This is the Adhipurusha who was referred to before. Andakoshe Brahmanda Madhye. He lived within the global universe, within the Brahmanda. Sarvai Satvai Anushayabhihi Jivaihi Sahitaha. Along with all the living entities. Hiranmayaha Brahmandaha. Here, Hiranmaya itself refers to the Brahmanda. Tasmin Sthitaha Hiranyagarbhaha. It is Hiranyagarbha who is situated within it that is being referred to here. Apsu iti purvam jalena antahpuranatvat. Apsu, on the water of the universe, because water had filled up the entirety of the inner portion. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur. So Samashti Virat Hiranmayaha. Okay, so then this Virat is actually Samashti Virat. It's a collective universe. Chaturdasha Hiranmaya Chaturdasha Bhuvanatmaka Andakosha ya apaha garbhodakani. This water refers to garbhodaka. Yadva apsu yo andakosha tasmin sa. Another meaning is the meaning that we know, which is being described by Sridhar Swami and Jiva Goswami. After the Lord entered each and every universe as the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, half of the universe was filled with water. The cosmic manifestation of the planetary systems, outer space, etc., which are visible to us, is only one half of the complete universe. Before the manifestation takes place and after the entrance of Vishnu within the universe, there's a period of 1,000 celestial years. All the living entities injected within the womb of the Mahatattva are divided in all universes with the incarnation of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and all of them lie down with the Lord until Brahma is born. Brahma is the first living being within the universe, and from him all other demigods and living creatures are born. Manu is the original father of mankind, and therefore in Sanskrit mankind is called Manushya. Human beings with different bodily qualities are distributed throughout the various planetary systems. 7. Savai Vishwasrajam Garbho Deva Karmatma Shaktiman Vibhabhajar Manad Manam Ekadha Dashadha Ridha. The total energy of the Mahatattva in the form of the gigantic Virat Rupa divided himself by himself into the consciousness of the living entities, the life of activity and self-identification, which are subdivided into 1, 10, and 3 respectively. Garbha Karya Rupaha Virat. Garbha, or total energy, refers to the Virat itself, which is the effect of the process of creation that has taken place so far. Deva Shakti. Where is that? Deva, Karma, Atma, Shaktiman, which refers to Deva Shakti, Karma Shakti, Atma Shakti. Look at this. Deva Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Taya, Ekadha, Sruddhaya, Vachinna Chaitanya Rupena. Consciousness of the living entities. Karma Shakti, Kriya Shakti, Taya, Dashadha, Prana Rupena, Prana Adayaha, Pancha. And then we have the life of activity, the Prana Shakti. So here Kriya Shakti refers to Prana Shakti. Prana. 10 types of prana. Naga, Kurmasya, Krikalo, Devadutto, Dhananjaya, Vidyate, Pancha. These are the 5. Evam Vritti Bhedena Dashavidha Prana. And they have their extensions, because of which prana is said to be of 10 types. And then we have Atma Shakti. Atma Shakti, Bhukta Shakti, Aya, Adhyatma. Adhyatmadi Bhedena. Dha. Atmanam Vibhaktam Kritavan. And this Bhukta Shakti, the capacity for experience, which Prabhupada refers to as self-identification. This was divided into 3 aspects. Adhyatma, Adhibhuta, Adhidaiva. Savai iti Daiva Karmatma Shaktiman iti atra Daiva Shaktiya, Karma Shaktiya, Atma Shaktiya cha yukta iti artha. अथ तस्य मुखाद्य अंगसिद्ध्यर्थम प्रथमं त्रिशक्तित्वमाह. And then before that universe attained features like a face and developed other bodily limbs, first of all, it is pointed out that 3 potencies were manifested. Vishwasraja Mahadadinam Garbha Karyarup. What is this? What is this? Karyarupan. कार्यरूपः कार्यरूपः दैव कर्मा ओके दैव कर्मात्म शक्तिमान जीव प्राण अध्यात्मादि शक्ति युक्तः. So he divided himself into the consciousness of the living entities, Jiva Shakti, the life of activity, Prana Shakti, and the self-identification in three aspects. Atmana eva atmanam vibhaja vibhaktam kritavan. He divided himself by himself. Ekadha Jiva Shaktiya, Dashadha Prana Shaktiya, Tridha Adhyatmadi Shaktiya. Okay, question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. In the previous verse, the commentary, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, there it's written that Samashti Virat. So, one universe is called Veshti, Prabhu.
Yes, individual.
So, but the reference is to Garbhodaksha Vishnu, but it's written Samashti Virat. So, Samashti Virat.
No, it looks like, look at this. All the living entities injected within the womb of the Mahatattva are divided in all universes with the incarnation of Garbhodaksha Vishnu. So when it says that the living entities were awakened, I think overall that is why he himself is giving two meanings to it. Two meanings to it. So one is it can be interpreted in terms of the samashti itself, and another is it can be interpreted in terms of the individual universes.
So means since it is said about all the universes together, means the Garbhodaksha Vishnus of all the universes. So in that way, Samashti, can we understand like that?
Yeah, in that way, Garbhodaksha Vishnu enters into all the universes. And then, of course, once he enters into all the universes, then individual developments start happening.
Hmm.
Consciousness is a sign of the living entity or the soul. The existence of the soul is manifest in the form of consciousness called Jnana Shakti. The total consciousness is that of the gigantic Virat Rupa, and the same consciousness is exhibited in individual persons. The activity of consciousness is performed through the air of life, which is of 10 divisions. The airs of life are called Prana, Apana, Udana, Vyana, and Samana, and are also differently qualified as Naga, Kurma, Kikara, Devadatta, and Dhananjaya. The consciousness of the soul becomes polluted by the material atmosphere, and thus various activities are exhibited in the false ego of bodily identification. These various activities are described in the Bhagavad Gita as Vapushaka Hyanantascha Buddhayo Vyavasayi Nam. The conditioned soul is bewildered into performing various activities for want of pure consciousness. In pure consciousness, the activity is one. The consciousness of the individual soul becomes one with the supreme consciousness when there is complete synthesis between the two. The monist believes that there is only one consciousness, whereas the Sattvatas or the devotees believe that although there is undoubtedly one consciousness, they are one because there is agreement. In the liberated sphere, there is agreement. The individual consciousness is advised to dovetail with the supreme consciousness as instructed by the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita 18.66. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. The individual consciousness, Arjuna, is advised to dovetail with the supreme consciousness and thus maintain his conscious purity. It is foolish to try to stop the activities of consciousness, but they can be purified when they are dovetailed with the supreme. This consciousness is divided into three modes of self-identification according to the proportion of purity. Adhyatmika or self-identification with the body and mind, Adhi-bhautika or self-identification with the material products, and Adhi-daivika or self-identification as a servant of the Lord. Of the three, Adhi-daivika self-identification is the beginning of purity of consciousness in pursuance of the desire of the Lord. 8. Asia ह्यशेषसत्त्वानाम् आत्मांशः परमात्मनः आद्योऽवतारो यत्रासो भूतग्रामो विभाव्यते. The gigantic universal form of the Supreme Lord is the first incarnation and plenary portion of the Super Soul. That universal form is the self of an unlimited number of living entities, and in him rests the aggregate creation, which thus flourishes. This is a very interesting scriptural quote by Madhvacharya. Adyovataro Vishnoho Purusho Nama Kirtitaha. Vishnu's. Right. Anyway, it will be here. Vishnustu Purusho Nama Kirtitaha. The first incarnation of Vishnu is celebrated by the name Purusha. And he created the Mahatattva. And then he completely entered into it. Because he is situated in the heart of Brahma, he is also referred to as Hridaya. Something to keep in mind. Evam vibhaga samarthyaya asya utkarshamaha. In order to point out that he is capable of such partitioning, his exalted position is described here. Eshahi iti. Ashesha sattvanam prananam atma. He is the self of an unlimited number of living entities. Vyashtinam tadamshatvat. Because all these individuals are his portions. Amshaha jivaha. The amsha refers to the jiva. Avataratva uktihi tasmin narayana avirbhava viprayena. It is described to be an avatara. He is described to be an avatara because Narayana is present in the universe now. Paramatma upasakanam chitta shuddhiya from so Yartam. It's not clear, but it must be Shuddhyartam. Ayameva upasya ityaha eshahi. For the worshippers of Paramatma, he is the first person to be worshipped for the purification of their hearts. That is pointed out here. Eshahi iti. Ashesha sattvanam prananam atma vyaktinam tadamshatvat. Avatara iti yoginam tatantaryamina saha tasya aikya bhavanaya. Is described to be an incarnation because he is considered one with the super soul or the yogis meditation. Bhutagramaha deva manushyadi samuhaha. The aggregate of creation refers to the devas, manushyas and others who are present inside creation. The Supreme Lord expands himself in two ways, by personal plenary expansions and separated minute expansions. The personal plenary expansions are Vishnu Tattvas, and the separated expansions are living entities. Since the living entities are very small, they are sometimes described as the marginal energy of the Lord. But the mystic yogis consider the living entities and the super soul, Paramatma, to be one and the same. It is, however, a minor point of controversy. After all, everything created rests on the gigantic Virat Rupa, or a universal form of the Lord. Relatively, it's a minor point of controversy. Ninth, Sadhyatma Sadhidhaivascha Sadhibhuta iti tridha Virat Prano Dashavidha Ekadha Hridayena cha. The gigantic universal form is represented by 3, 10, and 1 in the sense that he is the body, mind, and senses. 3. He is the dynamic force of all movements by 10 kinds of life energy. 10. And he is the one heart where the life energy is generated. 1. Purva shlokartham vivrinoti. This is an elaboration of what was stated in the previous shloka. Sadhyatma, adhyatma, adhyatmani, indriyani, tatsahitaha. Virat iti sarvatra. Atra devasya ishwarasya jivarupachi shaktihi taya hridayasthaya ekadha. The spiritual potency in the form of the jiva belonging to the Lord, Deva, because it is situated in the heart, is said to be of one kind, 3, 10, and 1. Vishnu Thakur, Ekadha, Dashadha, Vidha, Iti, Purvaktam, Vyutkramena Vivranati. He is going out of sequence in describing each of them in this verse. First Ekadha, and then Dashadha, and then Tritha. That is how it was stated. But here it is 3, 10, and 1. Reverse order. That is being elaborated here. Sadhyatma, Adhyatmani Indriyani Tatsahitaha, Adhidaivani Indriyanam Devataha. Okay. Adhidaiva refers to the controlling demigods of the senses, yes. Adhibhutani, Adhishthanani, Vishayahacha. And Adhibhuta refers to present objectives which refer to the sense objects and the places of residences of these demigods. Pranopana samanascha udano vyana evacha nagahurmascha krikalo devadatto dhananjaya iti vrittibhedena dashavidah prana iti dasha vidhena anena viradeva dashavida iti arthaha. So these are the 10 types of prana. And Virat itself is said to be of 10 types because of the 10 types of prana. Tatta pranaha, prakramanaha, nasagravarti. Okay, then there's a whole description of the movements of the different life airs. Hridayena, hridaya vachinnena chaitanyena jivena. Here, one in the heart refers to the Jivatma, who is individual consciousness and whose consciousness is restricted within the heart, which means it's restricted to one particular body alone. In the Bhagavad Gita 7.4 to 5, it is stated that the 8 elements, earth, water, fire, air, sky, mind, intelligence, and false ego are all products of the Lord's inferior energy, whereas the living entities who are seen to utilize the inferior energy originally belong to the superior energy, the internal potency of the Lord. The 8 inferior energies work grossly and subtly, whereas the superior energy works as a central generating force. This is experienced in the human body. The gross elements, namely earth, etc., form the external gross body and are like a coat, whereas a subtle mind and false ego act like the inner clothing of the body. The movements of the body are first generated from the heart, and all the activities of the body are made possible by the senses, powered by the 10 kinds of air within the body. The 10 kinds of air are described as follows. The main air passing through the nose in breathing is called prana. The air which passes through the rectum as evacuated bodily air is called apana. The air which adjusts the foodstuff within the stomach and which sometimes sounds as belching is called samana. The air which passes through the throat and the stoppage of which constitutes suffocation is called the udana air. And the total air which circulates throughout the entire body is called the dhyana air. Subtler than these 5 airs, there are others also. That which facilitates the opening of the eyes, mouth, etc. is called the naga air. The air which increases appetite is called the krikara air. The air which helps contraction is called the kurma air. The air which helps relaxation by opening the mouth wide in yawning is called the devadatta air. And the air which helps sustenance is called the dhananjaya air. All these airs are generated from the center of the heart, which is one only. This central energy is the superior energy of the Lord who is situated within the heart along with the soul, who acts under the guidance of the Lord. This is explained in the Bhagavad Gita 15.15 as follows. Sarvasya chaham hridisannivishto mattaspritir jnana upopanam cha vedesya sarvair hameva vedyo vedantakrit veda viddeva chaham. The complete central force is generated from the heart by the Lord who is seated there and who helps the conditioned soul in remembering and forgetting. The conditioned state is due to the soul's forgetfulness of his relationship of subordination to the Lord, to that is forgetting. One who wants to continue to forget the Lord is helped by the Lord to forget him birth after birth, but one who remembers him by dint of association with the devotee of the Lord is helped to remember him more and more. This is remembering. Thus, the conditioned soul can ultimately go back home, back to God. This process of transcendental help by the Lord is described in the Bhagavad Gita 10.10 as follows. Tesham satati yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam tatami buddhi yogam tam yanamam upayantite. Those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. The buddhi yoga process of self-realization with intelligence transcendental to the mind. This buddhi yoga process is actually devotion service. Can alone elevate one from the conditioned state of material entanglement in the cosmic construction. The conditioned state of the living entity is like that of a person who's within the depths of a huge mechanical arrangement. The mental speculators can reach the point of buddhi yoga after many, many lifetimes of speculation. But the intelligent person who begins from the platform of intelligence above the mind makes rapid progress in self-realization. Because the buddhi yoga process entails no fear of deterioration or retrogression at any time, it is a guaranteed path to self-realization as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 2.40. The mental speculators cannot understand the following example from the Shvetashvatar Upanishad. 2 birds, the soul and the super soul, are sitting in the tree of the body. The individual soul eats the fruit of the tree, while the other bird does not eat the fruit, but only observes the activities of the eating bird. The witnessing bird, without attachment, helps the fruit-eating bird perform fruitive activities. One who cannot understand this difference between the soul and the super soul or the living entity and God is certainly still in the entanglement of the cosmic machinery. And thus, must still await the time when he will be free from bondage. 10. Smaran Vishwasrujam Isho Vidyapitam Virajam Mata Patsvena Tejasai Sham Vivrittaye. The Supreme Lord is the super soul of all the demigods entrusted with the task of constructing the cosmic manifestation. Being thus prayed to by the demigods, he thought to himself and thus manifested the gigantic form for their understanding. Okay, there's a question here.
Prabhu, is there any possibility that these life hairs can ever be perceived by this Western materialistic science or medical science?
They can be what?
Perceived or understood, the life hairs.
I think we will come across in third canto only one purport where Prabhupada talks about ether or akasha. Somehow akasha is the interface between this prana and gross matter. I mean the other aspects of gross matter. And Prabhupada says this is a field for interesting research. Already there are scientists who are trying to investigate Ayurveda. Ayurveda has got all this prana, all these things are there in there. I think we are trying to examine all these things.
So this life air will come in subtle matter too or gross matter?
Earth, water, fire, air. Might have a, from what I can see, it appears to be gross. But there may be different types of air also. This is all Ayurveda subject. I have not gone into all these aspects as of now. I already uploaded one book.
Yeah.
You can examine how it describes air. Tapavitta Vayu anyway is one of the three dhatus of Ayurveda. You can examine that. Okay. Swami. Adhyatma adibhedam prapanchi itumaha smaraniti. This is an elaboration of Adhyatma adibhuta adidaiva. From here. Vigyapitam. Yavad balim teja harama ityadi. So, as the Supreme Lord was prayed for by these demigods, Tattvika Devas, the demigods presiding over the elements of creation. Svena Tejasa Chiksha. Yeah. By his own energy, he manifested this form, which means by his spiritual energy. Atapat evam karishyami iti alochitavan. He considered, let me do like this. Yasya jnanamayam tapaha iti shrute. Because the Shruti says that the Supreme Lord's consideration itself is considered to be a certain type of austerity. Atapat means literally he performed an austerity. So that Sridhar Swami explains. That actually simply means that he considered that I will engage in this activity. Vivrittaya, vidavritti labhaya. Nanu virat purushasya idrishi shakti che Ishvara praveshena kim putraha smaranati. The Virat Purusha has so much of capacity. Why did the Lord enter into it? Putraha smaranati. Anticipating that, the current verse is brought up. Athokshaja amshaha purushaha. The Purusha is an amsha of Athokshaja. Karana anugrahena eva kari shakti udbhavati iti bhavaha. By the mercy of the cause, the effect becomes capable. This is the implication. Ate etad eva savai vishwasrujam ityadhyuktam gyeyam. Atapat svena tejasa prakashetum ishtavan. Atapat indicates that he desired to manifest the universe by his own tejas, by his own prowess. Adhyatmadi vedam prapanchitam antaryami rupena pravistasya ishwarasya kimapi krityamaha. So some duty of the Lord who had entered into this universe in the form of the antaryami, the inner controller, is being described here. Smaranati. विज्ञापितं यावत् बलं तेजः हराम इत्यादि स्वेन तेजसा शक्त्या अतपत् प्रकाशयामास येषां विश्वसृजां विवृतये विविधवृत्तिलाभाय चक्षुषश्चक्षुर्वृतश्रोतस्य श्रोत्रम् इत्यादि श्रुतिः. Thus manifested the universal form for their understanding. For their understanding means for the experience of the senses to come about. He is in fact the eye of the eye and the ear of the ear. There are statements like this in the Shruti, which means he is the one that causes them to become capable. If he desires only the eye, the vision, the faculty of vision will be able to function. So he activates the senses. That is the point. The impersonalists are captivated by the gigantic universal form of the Supreme. They think that the controller behind this gigantic manifestation is imaginary. Intelligent persons, however, can estimate the value of the cause by observing the wonders of the effects. For example, the individual human body does not develop from the womb of the mother independently, but because the living entity, the soul, is within the body. Does not develop from the womb of the mother independently, but because the living entity, the soul, is within the body. Without the living entity, a material body cannot automatically take shape or develop. When any material object displays development, it must be understood that there is a spiritual soul within the manifestation. The gigantic universe has developed gradually, just as the body of a child develops. The conception that the transcendence enters within the universe is therefore logical. As the materialists cannot find the soul and the supersoul within the heart, similarly, for want of sufficient knowledge, they cannot see that the Supreme Soul is the cause of the universe. The Lord is therefore described in the Vedic language as Avam Manasa Gocharaha, beyond the conception of words and minds. Due to a poor fund of knowledge, the mental speculators try to bring the Supreme within the purview of words and minds. But the Lord refuses to be so intelligible. The speculator has no adequate words or mind to gauge, to measure the infinity of the Lord. The Lord is called Adhokshaja, or the person who is beyond perception by the blunt, limited potency of our senses. One cannot perceive the transcendental name or form of the Lord by mental speculation. The mundane PhDs are completely unable to understand the Supreme with their limited senses. Such attempts by the puffed up PhDs are compared to the philosophy of the frog in the well. A frog in a well was informed of the gigantic Pacific Ocean, and he began to puff himself up in order to understand or measure the length and breadth of the Pacific Ocean. Ultimately, the frog burst and died. The title PhD can also be interpreted as plow department, a title meant for the tillers in the paddy field. The attempt of the tillers in the paddy field to understand the cosmic manifestation and the cause behind such wonderful work can be compared to the endeavor of the frog in the well to calculate the measurement of the Pacific Ocean. The Lord will reveal himself only to a person who is submissive and who engages in his transcendental loving service. The demigods controlling the elements and ingredients of universal affairs prayed to the Lord for guidance, and thus he manifested his gigantic form as he did at the request of Arjuna. 11. Athat tasyabhitaptasya katidhayatananijha nirabhidyanta devanam tani me katatashunu. Maitreya said, you may now hear from me how the Supreme Lord separated himself into the diverse forms of the demigods after the manifestation of the gigantic universal form. Tasya samashti virajaha abhitaptasya parameshwarena prakashitasya ayatanani sthanabhedah nirabhidyanta prithagbhavam me mattaha. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur interprets this to refer to the collective universal form. So when the Supreme Lord, when he decided to manifest the universes at that time, the different locations became manifest. Hear of them from me. The demigods are separated parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, as are all other living entities. The only difference between the demigods and ordinary living entities is that when living entities are rich in pious acts of devotion service to the Lord, but still desire to lord it over the material energy, they are promoted to the posts of demigods who are entrusted by the Lord with executing the management of the universal affairs. Well, Tasyagnir Rasyam Nirbhinnam. So these are actually the residences of the demigods, which indicate that they now require particular senses to control. तस्याग्निरास्यं निर्भिन्नं लोकपालो विशत्पदं वाचा स्वांशेन वक्तव्यं ययासौ प्रतिपद्यते. Agni or heat separated from his mouth, and all the directors of material affairs entered into his mouth in their respective positions. By that energy, the living entity expresses himself in words. Ayatanani eva aha. So these are the different domains of the demigods. Location is not the right word. Domain is the right word. Tasyagnir ityadi chaturdashabhi. This he does it in 14. In 14 verses. Asyam nirbhinnam prathak jatam. Padam swasthanam. Swamshena swashaktya vacha saha avishat. So by his own amsha, in the form of the potency for speech, he entered into it. Asau jivaha. And because of that, the jiva vaktavyam pratipadyate, shabdam ucharayati. Therefore, he is able to articulate sounds. Sarvatra yan nirubhinnam tad adhishthanam agnyadi prasvantam adhidevam vagadi indriyam tritiyantam adhyatmam pratipattavyam adhibhutam. Throughout these 14 verses, you will find the domain. One will find the adhideva, which refers to Agni and the other demigods. You will find the adhyatma aspect, which refers to the faculties of speech and so on. And then adhibhutam is also indicated. The different gross functionings of each senses. Like for instance here, speech is articulated. This is how this particular sense functions grossly. Nirbhinnam pratyagyatam hasyam swasthanam vacha vagindriyena saha agniravishyam swamshena svena ekamshena yaya vacha eva aso jivaha virat vaktavyam pratipadyate shabdam ucharayati. Swamshena indicates that by a single capacity of speech, this particular aspect of speech in the universe is now activated. Evam sarvatra yannirbhinnam. Okay. Yat punar dvitiyantam kvachit shashtyantam tadadhibhutam vishayaha. The mouth of the gigantic universal form of the Lord is the source of the speaking power. The director of the fire element is that power's controlling deity or the Adhidaiva. The speeches delivered are adhyatma or bodily functions, and the subject matter of the speeches is a material production or the adhibhuta principle. Question.
Prabhuji, in 11th purport, when Prabhupada is writing, when their desire to lord it over material energy vanished, they are made into demigods. So, in 11th purport, the only difference between demigods and ordinary living entities. Oh, still desire. Just change है.
Change. What do you have?
No, actually the Veda base which we are reading, in that it is written something else, and in this Veda base it is something else. Here it is written in yours, which you are sharing. It's okay. Still desire to lord it over. And in our Veda base, it is written when their desire to lord it over has vanished. So that's why this confusion was here.
Database.io.
This is a mobile application. Should be same with IO.
When their desire to lord it over material energy has vanished, they are promoted to the posts of demigods. This is also technically not wrong because when their gross desire is vanished, but their subtle desire prevails, then they are promoted to the posts of demigods. It's a fact. Because the demigods, they are the subtle aspect of the Brahmanda that enter Swarga, this Sukshma Jagat. They're not very happy to enter into the gross world that we experience and enjoy here. So it's not technically wrong, but it could be some transcription error that needs to be examined, whether it is our own editors who have done this or whether it's not there. That has to be examined. What is the
Okay.
original saying? This is for third canto. Uh, uh, point 12. That lord over the material energy has vanished. There's nothing wrong with this. Just that we need to understand that they don't want to lord it over gross aspect of material energy. They're interested in subtle enjoyments.
Bro, can we say that their desire to lord over sinfully? That one day you were saying that they don't have the desire for that sinful
Yeah, yeah,
innocence they engage in.
yeah.
So,
They want to make spiritual progress. They want Vairagya, Vidya, and Bhakti. Just that they want to experience material desires and in such a manner that these desires disappear. Swanistas. Okay. Okay. I don't know if I read this. Let me read it out again in case I haven't read it. The mouth of the gigantic universal form of the Lord is the source of the speaking power. The director of the fire element is that powers controlling deity or the Adhidaiva principle. The speeches delivered are Adhyatma or bodily functions, and the subject matter of the speeches is the material production or the Adhibhuta principle. 13. Nirbhinnam talu varno lokapalo vishadhare jihvayam shena cha rasam yayaso pratipadyate. When the palette of the gigantic form was separately manifested, Varuna, the director of water in the planetary systems, entered therein. And thus the living entity has a facility to taste everything with his tongue. Harehe Virajaha. Haritvena Dheyasya Virajaha. Here the universal form is said to be the Lord Hari, because the universe is meant to be meditated upon as Lord Hari by the Paramatma worshippers. Therefore, this terminology is used. 14. Nirbhinne Ashvinaunase Vishnora Padam Ghranenamshena Gandhasya Pratipattir Yato Bhavet. When the Lord's two nostrils separately manifested themselves, they do a Lashwani Kumar, entered them in their proper positions, and because of this, the living entities can smell the aromas of everything. Fifteen. Yes.
Prabhu, we saw that this description of Virat Roop has been covered previously. So, is there any reason that it is again coming?
It is elaborated now. Previously, it was not elaborated in this manner, where the sequence was not very clear previously. When the demigods, the primal demigods, the original demigods, because in various phases it has been described over the last few chapters. When the demigods offered prayers, then the Lord allowed them, and then step by step it is being described. It's a further elaboration. Fifteen. Nirbhinne akshani tvashta lokapalo vishadvibho chakshushamshena rupanam pratipattir yato bhavet. Thereafter, the two eyes of the gigantic form of the Lord were separately manifested. The sun, the director of light, entered them with the partial representation of eyesight, and thus the living entities can have vision of forms. Tvashta, Adityaha, Suryaha. 16. Nirbhinnanyasya charmani lokapalo nilo vishad pranenamshena samsparsham yenaso pratipadyate. When there was a manifestation of skin separated from the gigantic form, Anila, the deity directing the wind, entered with partial touch, and thus the living entities can realize tactile knowledge. Pranenamshena. Pranavaddeha vyapinatvag indriyena ityartha. Here, the word pranena has been used. Pranena amshena, the part of the breathing. Actually speaking, this is a reference to the sensation of touch. And just as the life airs are all pervading inside a body, the sensation of touch is also all pervading in a body. Of course, outside, primarily. Charmani iti is charmani. Charma upalakshitattvag iti artha iti dvitiya sandhe tika asya vartate pranena indriyena atratu tvag rupena iti artha. So here, the part of the breathing refers to the sensation of touch. 17. Karnamasya vinirбhinnam dhishnyam swam vibishur dishaha shrotrenam shena shabdasya siddhim yena prapadyate. When the ears of the gigantic form became manifested, all the controlling deities of the directions entered into them with the hearing principles by which all the living entities hear and take advantage of sound. Shabdasya siddhim jnanam. Take advantage of sound means they are able to comprehend the communication. The ear is the most important instrument in the body of the living entity. Sound is the most important medium for carrying the message of distant and unknown things. Perfection of all sound or knowledge enters through the ear and makes one's life perfect. The entire Vedic system of knowledge is received by oral reception only, and the sound is the most important source of knowledge. 18. Vachamasya vinirvinna vivishurdhishnimoshadhi amshena romabhih kandum yairasau pratipadyate. When there was a separate manifestation of skin, the controlling deities of sensations, and there are different parts entering into it, different parts entered into it, and thus the living entities feel itching and happiness due to touch. Vacham charma oshadhihi oshadhayaha. Where is oshadhihi? Oshadhihi. Sensations. Oshadhihi refers to herbs, medicines like that. Tvag indriyasya eva sthanabhedena vishayadvayam kanduh sparshascha. The sense of touch deals with both itching and touch. Tatra shayam namabheda devata bhedascha iti dvitiya skandhe eva vyakhyata. This has been explained in the second canto commentary itself. When there's a difference in nomenclature, there's also a difference in the presiding deity. Vachamiti ekasmin api sparshe grahake bhedadvayam idam kalpyam bahiradhishtanam charma indriyam loma devatascha oshadhyadhishtatya iti ekaha antarbahiradhishtanam tu tvagindriyam api tvagdevatacha vayu ityanyah bhedaha. Some points to be noted. The external feature of skin as well as the presiding deity of the hair. Presiding deity of the hairs refer to the presiding deity of the herbs. Then there is the faculty of touch, which is both inside and outside. Here, skin is the sense, and skin also refers to its presiding deity, which is also Vayu. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, Oshadhihi Oshadhayaha, Atra Tvachi Adhisthane Tvak, Romani cha Indriyadvayam. So, in the skin itself, there are two senses. One is skin itself, and then you have the hairs on the body. Tatra Tvagindriya Anilaha Devata, Sparshaha Vishayaha. The Devata or the presiding deity for the sense of the skin is Anila, Vayu. And then the functioning is in terms of touch. Romendriye Oshadhya Devataha, Kandu Vishayaha. Kanduhu Vishayaha. Okay, fine. Whereas when you consider the sense of the senses of the hairs on the body, the devatas are the oshadhis, the presiding deity of the herbs, and the functioning of these hairs are experienced as itching. For sense perception, there are two principal items, touch and itching, and both of them are controlled by the skin and hairs on the body. According to Sri Vishnu Chakravarti, the controlling deity of touch is the air passing within the body, and the controlling deity of the hairs on the body is Oshadhi. For the skin, the object of perception is touch, and for the hairs on the body, the object of perception is itching. Perception means experience. Okay, question?
Bro, I'm sorry if question sounds a little silly, but it came, so I thought to ask. In the 17th purport, verse 17, one may ask that why only this perfection is made available through ears? Like there are scriptures you hear and you become perfect. Why not there something which can be just touched and I become perfect, or which I can smell and I become perfect, like scripture?
Because sound not only refers to just any sound, it actually refers to sounds which communicate information. Sounds which communicate information. Just like there are so many sounds we hear when you walk, nature also, so many sounds we hear. The wind blows, so many things. But then there is something called communication. Communication is intentional. When one conscious being is capable of conveying certain ideas to another conscious being intentionally, not unintentionally. We're talking of intentional communication. So that is expressed through the Vedic concept of Shabda. Intentional communication is presented as sound because you need to understand. You need to understand what is this world, what is my functioning in this world, what is my relationship with the controller of this world, why am I suffering, all of that. Okay, 1 minute. Therefore, we have the Shruti and we have the Smriti. And both of them communicate. Communication. So therefore, sound is given special importance. Okay.
Okay, bro.
19. मेढ्रं तस्य विनिर्भिन्नं स्वधिष्ण्यं उपाविश्य रेतसांशेन येनासो आनंदम प्रतिपद्यते. When the genitals of the gigantic form separately became manifest, then Prajapati, the original living creature, entered into them with his partial semen, and thus the living entities can enjoy sex pleasure. Ah, Prajapati. Retasa reta upalakshitena upasthena ityartha. With this partial semen means with this partial, with the reproductive organ. 20. Gutam pumso vinirभिन्नं mitro lokesha avisha payunamshena yenaso visargam pratipadyate. The vacuating channel separately became manifest, and the director named Mitra entered into it. With partial organs of evacuation. Thus, the living entities are able to pass stool and urine. Visargam malamutrotsargam. 21. Astavasya vinirbhinnav indraswar pattir avishat vartayam shena purusho yaya vrittim prapadyate. Thereafter, when the hands of the gigantic form separately became manifested. Indra, the ruler of the heavenly planets, entered into them, and thus the living entity is able to transact business for his livelihood. Vartaya, Kraya Vikrayadi Shaktya, Vrittim Jivikam, able to transact business, he is able to buy and sell things. For that he needs a hand, he needs his hands. क्रय विक्रयादि शक्त्या इति वार्ता बल शिल्पादि शब्दवाच्यम अध्यात्मम वृत्तिम जीविकाम. This is also required. You need strength of hands in order to sculpt and so on. That is also included here. 22. पादावस्य विनिर्भिन्नौ लोकेषु विष्णुराविशद गत्या स्वांशेन पुरुषो यया प्राप्यम प्रपद्यते. Thereafter, the legs of the gigantic form separately became manifest, and the demigod named Vishnu, not the personality of Godhead, entered with partial movement. This helps the living entity move to his destination. बुद्धिं चास्य विनिर्भिन्नां वागीशोधिष्ण्यमाविशत् बोधेनांशेन बोद्धव्यं प्रतिपत्तिर्यतो भवेत्. When the intelligence of the gigantic form separately became manifest, Brahma, the Lord of the Vedas, entered into it with the partial power of understanding, and thus an object of understanding is experienced by the living entities. बुद्ध्यास्पदं गोलकं हृदय ekadesham. This is actually a part of the heart. Vagishah Brahma Bodhena Buddhya Shlokayam Asarvasammataha. Krishna Chakravarti Thakur says this verse is not found in all the readings. 24. Swayam Chasya Nirbhinnam Chandramadhishtimavishad Manasamshena Yenaso Vikriyam Pratipadyate. After that, the heart of the gigantic form separately manifested itself, and into it entered the moon demigod with partial mental activity. Thus, the living entity can conduct its mental speculations. Vikriyam, Sankalpadi Rupam. Vikriyam, resolution, mental speculation, refers to Sankalpa, Vikalpa, and so on. The idea of accepting something or rejecting something, all of this are included here. 25. Atmanam chasya nirbhinnam abhimano vishatpadam karmanamshena yenaso kartavyam pratipadyate. Thereafter, the materialistic ego of the gigantic form separately manifested itself, and into it entered Rudra, the controller of false ego, with his own partial activities, by which the living entity performs his objective actions. Atmanam, Hankaram. Abhimanyate anena iti abhimanaha Rudraha. Karmanaham Vritya. Yeah. The activity of this false ego is egoism itself. Kartavyam iti kriyam. Atmanam aham bhava aspadam. Karmana aham bhavena indriyana. Aham bhavena should be bhavena. But it might be aham bhavena also. Atmanam ahankara aspadam golakam hridayaika desham. This false ego is also a part of the heart. Abhimanyate anena iti abhimana rudraha karmana ahankarana kartavyam vivantavyam. The false ego of materialistic identity is controlled by the demigod Rudra, incarnation of Lord Shiva. Rudra is the incarnation of the Supreme Lord who controls the mode of ignorance within material nature. The activities of the false ego are based on the objective of the body and mind. Most persons conducted by the false ego are controlled by Lord Shiva. When one reaches a final version of ignorance, he falsely thinks of himself as the Supreme Lord. That egoistic conviction of the conditioned soul It's the last layer of the illusory energy which controls the entire material world. Okay, I'll stop with this. Let me make a note. 26. Start with 26. Okay.
Prabhu, so intelligence also are parts of heart. That in that way, mind is also part of heart.
Yeah.
Oh,
Subtle
this.
body, subtle body. Subtle body is in the heart now.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll stop with that.